Single dad saw a little girl searching trash on Christmas Eve. What he discovered about her story left him completely stunned. Nathan Hayes thought Christmas Eve would be just another lonely night at work, but when he spotted a small figure digging through garbage behind his apartment building, he made a decision that would change two lives forever. What started as a simple act of kindness revealed a heartbreaking truth that no child should ever face, and led through a transformation neither of them saw coming. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The bitter December wind cut through the night air like a knife. Nathan Hayes pulled his coat tighter as he stepped out of his apartment building, keys jingling in his hand. Christmas Eve, 11:47 p.m. Just another night. Just another shift at the security company where silence was his only companion. But as Nathan walked toward his car, something made him stop. A small figure near the dumpster, moving slowly, deliberately. Nathan squinted through the darkness, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. At first, he thought it might be a stray animal, but as his eyes adjusted, his heart nearly stopped. It was a child. A little girl no more than 7 years old was methodically searching through the garbage, her thin fingers red and trembling from the cold, picked through empty food containers and crumpled papers with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this before. Nathan's feet moved before his mind could process what he was seeing. "Hey there," he called softly, not wanting to startle her. The girl's head snapped up, her wide brown eyes filled with terror. She clutched a partially eaten sandwich against her chest, ready to run. "It's okay," Nathan said, raising his hand slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl remained frozen, studying his face with the wariness of someone much older than her years. She wore a tattered purple jacket that swallowed her small frame, and her dark hair hung in tangled strands around her pale, hollow cheeks. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Nathan asked gently. After what felt like forever, she whispered, "Melody." "Melody," Nathan repeated, taking a careful step closer. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Nathan." He knelt down to her level, his heart breaking at the sight of this tiny girl alone in the freezing night. "Are you looking for something specific?" Melody's grip on the sandwich tightened. "Food," she admitted, her voice barely audible above the wind. The word hit Nathan like a punch to the gut. No child should be searching for food in a dumpster. Not on Christmas Eve. Not ever. "Where are your parents, Melody?" The question seemed to drain whatever color remained in her cheeks. Her bottom lip trembled as she looked down at the ground. I don't have any," she said, her voice cracking. Nathan felt something twist painfully in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years, something he'd buried so deep he thought it was gone forever, the protective instinct of a father. 3 years ago, Nathan Hayes had been a different man. He'd had a wife, Sarah, with eyes that sparkled when she laughed, and hands that could turn their small apartment into a home with just a few touches. They'd been planning their future together, painting the nurseries soft yellow because they wanted to be surprised. Sarah would place Nathan's hand on her growing belly every night, and they'd talk about names, about dreams, about the family they were building. But life had other plans. Sarah had gone into labor on a rainy Thursday morning in March. Nathan had driven to the hospital with shaking hands and a heart full of joy, ready to meet their son. He paced the waiting room, calling family, texting friends. His world expanded with possibility. Then, the doctor emerged with eyes that couldn't meet his. Complications. Unexpected. Rare. In the space of an hour, Nathan had lost everything that mattered. Sarah, their unborn son, David, his entire future. The man who'd entered that hospital ready to become a father, left as someone else entirely. Broken. Empty. Alone. For 3 years, Nathan had lived like a ghost. He'd moved to a smaller apartment, taken a job that required minimal human interaction, and built walls around his heart so high that nothing could scale them. He'd convinced himself he was fine, that this was enough, that he didn't need anyone. Until now. "What do you mean you don't have any?" Nathan asked Melody, his voice gentler than it had been in years. Melody's eyes filled with tears. She was desperately trying to hold back. "I was living with my Grandma Ruth. She was all I had after—" Her voice trailed off. "After my mama left when I was a baby." Nathan waited, sensing there was more. "Ruth got sick 3 weeks ago," Melody continued, her words coming faster now, as if speaking them quickly might make them hurt less. "She had this cough that wouldn't go away, and she was so tired all the time. We didn't have money for the doctor, so she just kept taking medicine from the store." The little girl wiped her nose with the back of her sleeve. "One morning, I tried to wake her up for breakfast, but she wouldn't open her eyes. I shook her and called her name, but she wouldn't wake up." Nathan's throat constricted. He knew that feeling. The desperate shaking, the denial, the moment when reality crashes down and changes everything. "The people in uniforms came and took her away," Melody whispered. "They said I had to go live with new families. But—" Her voice broke completely now, and the tears she'd been fighting finally spilled over. "But none of them wanted me to stay. They kept moving me around, and the last people, they don't care about me. So I walked here. I thought maybe if I came back to our old neighborhood, Ruth might come home too." Nathan felt tears burning behind his own eyes. This child had been bounced around the system like she was nothing more than paperwork, forgotten, abandoned, left to survive on scraps and hope, just like he'd felt after Sarah died, except she was 7 years old. "Melody," Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion, "how long have you been out here?" 2 days, she admitted. "I've been sleeping in the basement of that apartment complex next door. There's a broken window I can fit through." 2 days. A 7-year-old child had been surviving on her own for 2 days in December weather. Nathan stood up slowly, his mind racing. He pulled out his phone and checked the time. 12:03 a.m. Christmas Day. "Melody, I want you to listen to me very carefully. You don't have to do this alone anymore." The girl looked up at him with confusion and a wariness that broke his heart. Adults had made promises to her before. They'd all been broken. "I know you don't know me," Nathan continued, "and I know you probably don't trust grown-ups very much right now, but I promise you this. I am not going anywhere." Something in his voice, maybe the raw honesty or the way his own pain reflected in his eyes, made Melody's shoulders relax just slightly. "How about we start by getting you somewhere warm and getting some real food in you?" Nathan asked. Melody hesitated, torn between desperation and the survival instinct that told her not to trust strangers. But the cold was seeping through her thin jacket, and the sandwich in her hands was moldy on one corner. She nodded. Nathan's apartment was modest, but clean. He hadn't entertained guests in 3 years, and it showed. The space was functional, but sterile. No pictures on the walls, no personal touches, nothing that spoke of the life he'd once imagined building. But as he watched Melody's eyes widen at the simple warmth of central heating, Nathan saw his home differently. Through the eyes of someone who had nothing, his nothing suddenly felt like something. "Let me run you a bath," Nathan said, heading toward the bathroom. "You must be frozen." As the tub filled with hot water, Nathan gathered some of his smaller clothes for Melody to wear. A t-shirt that would be like a dress on her, clean socks, sweatpants with a drawstring that could be tightened. While Melody soaked in the warm water, probably the first bath she had had in days, Nathan heated up leftover soup and made grilled cheese sandwiches. Simple food, but warm and filling. When Melody emerged from the bathroom, swimming in Nathan's clothes, her hair clean and her cheeks pink from the hot water, she looked like a completely different child. Still thin, still wary, but human again. She ate quietly, carefully, as if she was afraid the food might disappear. Nathan watched her methodical bites and realized she was trying to make it last. "There's more," he said gently. "You can have as much as you want." Melody's eyes filled with tears again. "Really? Really?" As she ate, Nathan's mind was working. He couldn't just let her go back to the system that had failed her so completely, but he also couldn't just keep her without going through proper channels. He thought about Sarah, about the nursery they had painted, about the dreams they had had of caring for a child. Maybe this was why he'd survived when she hadn't. Maybe this was his second chance at the family that he'd lost. That night, as Melody slept fitfully on Nathan's couch, he made phone calls. He contacted the Department of Children and Family Services, explained the situation, and requested information about emergency guardianship procedures. He called his supervisor to request time off. He reached out to Mitchell, a lawyer friend from his past life, despite the late hour. Mitchell answered on the third ring, his voice groggy with sleep. "Nathan, is everything okay? It's Christmas morning, man." "Mitch, I need your help," Nathan said. And for the first time in 3 years, he meant it. As Nathan explained the situation, he watched Melody toss and turn on the couch. Even in sleep, she couldn't find peace. Her small face was creased with worry. Her hands clutched the blanket like a lifeline. "This is going to be complicated," Mitchell warned. "The system doesn't like it when people just show up wanting to adopt. There are procedures, background checks, home studies." "I don't care how complicated it is," Nathan said, his voice firm with the determination he hadn't felt since Sarah died. "This little girl has been failed by everyone who is supposed to protect her. I won't be another person who walks away." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Nathan, are you sure about this? I mean, it's been 3 years since Sarah and the baby, and you've been pretty isolated. Taking care of a traumatized child is going to be—" "I know what it's going to be," Nathan interrupted. "And I know I'm not the same person I was before. But maybe that's exactly why I can help her. We both know what it's like to lose everything. We both know what it's like to be alone." When Nathan hung up the phone, he found Melody standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "You're still here," she whispered, as if she couldn't quite believe it. "Of course I'm still here," Nathan said, kneeling down to her level. "I told you I wasn't going anywhere." "But in the morning," she started, "in the morning, we're going to figure out how to make this work. You're not going back to sleeping in basements or searching through garbage, not while I'm here." Melody threw her arms around Nathan's neck, and he felt something crack open in his chest. Something that had been frozen solid for 3 years suddenly began to thaw. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork, court hearings, and bureaucratic red tape. Nathan threw himself into the process with the same intensity he'd once reserved for avoiding life altogether. He attended every meeting, filled out every form, and submitted to every background check and psychological evaluation the system required. He took parenting classes and attended therapy sessions designed to assess his readiness to care for a child. Throughout it all, Melody remained in his care under emergency placement status. Nathan watched her begin to relax, to trust that he wouldn't disappear like everyone else had. But healing wasn't linear. Some nights, Melody would wake up screaming from nightmares, reliving the morning she'd found Ruth unresponsive. Nathan would sit with her until the terror passed, holding her small hand and reminding her that she was safe. Other times, she would hoard food in her room, terrified that it would be taken away. Nathan would gently redistribute it to the kitchen, explaining again and again that there would always be more. There were moments when she would shut down completely, retreating into herself, as if preparing for Nathan to abandon her too. During those times, Nathan would simply stay present, continuing their routines, showing her through actions rather than words that he was committed to staying. Nathan learned things he never thought he'd need to know: how to braid hair, how to help with homework, how to navigate a 7-year-old's complex emotions while processing his own grief and fear. But he also learned about joy again. The first time Melody laughed, really laughed, at a silly joke Nathan made while cooking breakfast, he felt his heart remember what happiness could sound like. When she brought home her first A+ in math, her face glowing with pride as she showed him the paper, Nathan understood what it meant to be proud of someone else's accomplishments. The day she started calling him Dad instead of Nathan, quietly and tentatively, as if testing the word, Nathan had to excuse himself to the bathroom to cry, tears of gratitude and overwhelming love. "Have you ever felt like you were meant to meet someone?" Nathan asked during one of his therapy sessions, 6 months after finding Melody. Dr. Richards, the counselor assigned to evaluate Nathan's fitness as a parent, looked up from her notes. "What makes you feel that way?" Nathan considered the question. "Before I found Melody, I was just existing, going through the motions. I convinced myself I was fine, but I wasn't living. I was hiding." He paused, thinking about Sarah, about the life they'd planned that had been cut short. "When Sarah died, when we lost the baby, I thought that was it for me. I thought my chance at being a father died with them. But maybe this was always part of the plan. Maybe I needed to go through that loss to understand what Melody was feeling. Maybe I needed to know what it was like to have your whole world disappear, so I could help her rebuild hers." Dr. Richards nodded thoughtfully. "And how has caring for Melody affected your own healing process?" Nathan smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "She saved me. I thought I was rescuing her that night, but she was rescuing me too. She gave me a reason to live again, a purpose." He looked out the window where Melody was playing on the playground, visible from the office, her laughter carrying on the spring air. "I was drowning in my grief, and I didn't even realize it until I had someone else to care for. Someone who needed me to be strong. She made me want to be the man Sarah always believed I could be." If this story is touching your heart, let us know in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment where helping someone else ended up healing you too? The courthouse was busier than Nathan had expected for a Tuesday morning. He sat in the hallway outside the family court, his leg bouncing with nervous energy. Melody sat beside him, wearing her favorite purple dress, not the tattered jacket she'd been wearing that first night, but a beautiful new dress that actually fit her properly. "Are you nervous?" she asked, her small hand finding his. "A little," Nathan admitted. "Are you?" Melody considered this seriously. "I think I'm excited nervous. Like when you're about to open a present you really, really want, but you're scared it might not be what you hoped for." Nathan squeezed her hand. "What are you hoping for?" "For you to be my real dad forever, not just until someone decides I have to go somewhere else." Nathan's throat tightened. "That's what I'm hoping for too." When their case was called, Nathan and Melody walked into the courtroom hand in hand. Mitchell was there, along with the social worker who had been overseeing Melody's case and the guardian ad litem appointed to represent Melody's interests. Judge Patricia Hernandez looked over the paperwork spread across her desk. She'd been a family court judge for 15 years, and she'd seen every kind of situation imaginable. But there was something about this case that had stayed with her since the first hearing. "Mr. Hayes," Judge Hernandez began, "when we first met 6 months ago, you were a single man with no experience raising children, requesting emergency guardianship of a child you'd known for less than 24 hours. I'll admit, I had my concerns. However," the judge continued, "the reports I received from Dr. Richards, from Melody's teachers, from the social workers who have monitored your home all paint the same picture. She looked directly at Melody. "And young lady, I understand you have something you'd like to say." Melody stood up, her voice clear and strong. "Your Honor, Nathan saved my life. Not just that first night when I was cold and hungry, but every day since then. He helped me remember what it felt like to be safe. He teaches me things and helps me with my homework and braids my hair, even when he does it crooked." A ripple of gentle laughter went through the courtroom. "He stays with me when I have bad dreams, and he always keeps his promises. I know he's my real dad because he chose me, and he keeps choosing me every single day." Judge Hernandez smiled. "Well then, by the power vested in me by the state, I hereby grant the petition for adoption. Nathan Hayes, you are now the legal father of Melody Hayes." The gavel came down with a satisfying thud. Nathan felt his knees nearly give out with relief and joy. He looked down at Melody, who was grinning so widely he thought her face might split in half. "We did it," she whispered. "We did it," Nathan confirmed, lifting her up in a hug that conveyed 3 years of grief transformed into overwhelming love. That evening, as they celebrated with takeout Chinese food in their living room, their tradition for special occasions, Melody presented Nathan with something she'd been working on in art therapy. It was a drawing of 2 people holding hands in front of a house, with the words "My Family" written in careful letters across the top. "This is us," she said, suddenly shy. "Is that okay?" Nathan felt tears spring to his eyes as he knelt down to her level. "It's more than okay, sweetheart. It's perfect." He looked at the drawing more closely. The house had yellow curtains in the windows, just like the ones they'd picked out together for their new home. The garden had flowers that Melody had insisted they plant, and the 2 figures were smiling, their hands intertwined. "Can I tell you something?" Nathan said, hanging the picture on the refrigerator in the place of honor. "What?" "I used to think that families were only the people you were born with. But you taught me that the best families are the ones we choose, the ones we build with love and patience and commitment." Melody climbed into his lap, something she'd started doing when she needed comfort or wanted to share something important. "Nathan," she said softly. "Yes, honey?" "Thank you for not walking away that night." Nathan kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Thank you for letting me stay." As he tucked Melody into bed that night, Nathan reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The scared, hungry child who had been searching through garbage for survival had become the light of his life, and the broken man who had been hiding from the world had found his purpose in loving and protecting her. Sometimes healing comes in the form we least expect. Sometimes the family we need isn't the one we planned, but the one that chooses us when we need it most. Stories like this remind us that family isn't just about blood. It's about love, choice, and commitment. If you believe in the power of compassion to change lives, please consider subscribing to hear more stories that matter. Nathan had never been much of a believer in fate or destiny. After Sarah's death, he'd stopped believing in much of anything. But as he watched Melody sleep peacefully in her own bed, in their home, surrounded by the security of knowing she belonged somewhere, he couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, everything had happened exactly as it was supposed to. 2 broken people had found each other on the coldest, loneliest night of the year. And in choosing to care for each other, they had created something neither had thought possible. A family built not on shared genetics, but on shared understanding of loss and the healing power of unconditional love. The man who had lost his wife and unborn son had found new purpose in protecting and raising a daughter who needed him. The little girl who had lost everyone she'd ever loved had found a father who would move heaven and earth to make sure she never felt abandoned again. In finding each other that Christmas Eve, Nathan and Melody had discovered what family really means. Not the people you're born to, but the people who choose to love you, fight for you, and stay with you no matter what storms life brings. Sometimes the most profound transformations begin with the smallest acts of kindness, a decision to stop instead of walking past, a willingness to open your heart when you thought it was permanently closed, the courage to let someone else's need change your entire life's direction. And sometimes, when you think you're saving someone else, you discover that they were actually saving you. Nathan Hayes had stepped out of his apartment building that Christmas Eve, thinking he was heading to another lonely night of work. Instead, he'd found his daughter, his purpose, his second chance at the love he thought he'd lost forever. And Melody had found her father, not the one who had abandoned her before she was born, but the one who saw her at her most desperate moment and decided she was worth saving, worth choosing, worth loving for the rest of his life. In the end, that's all any of us really want: to be seen, chosen, and loved unconditionally, to belong somewhere, to matter to someone, to know that if we disappeared tomorrow, there would be someone who would search for us, who would fight for us, who would never give up on us. Nathan and Melody had given that gift to each other, and in doing so, they had created something beautiful from something broken. They had built a family from the ashes of loss and the foundation of love. That's the stunning truth that left Nathan speechless that Christmas Eve. Sometimes the family you need most is the one you never saw coming. Sometimes love finds you in the most unexpected places, wearing the most unexpected face, at the moment when you least expect it, but need it most. And sometimes the best Christmas gift isn't wrapped in paper and tied with a bow. Sometimes it's wrapped in a tattered purple jacket, searching through garbage for hope, waiting for someone to see them as worth saving. Nathan saw, he chose, he stayed, and that made all the difference. Friends, if this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, if it reminded you of the power we all have to change someone's life with a simple act of kindness, please don't just watch and walk away. Hit that subscribe button and join our Everbill Stories family.